To understand humanity as a whole, you need to understand why people are the way that they are. Trying to understand history, politics, or anything else that is made by human hands will lead you down a rabbit hole. Trying to understand multiple political interest and self-awareness of your own stupidity is surprisingly very hard. So in order to explain why people voted for Trump, or why Putin invaded Ukraine, or why Germany is so fucking slow in its own bureaucracy, or even why the UK left the EU, will make you severely suicidal. But of course, to understand politics, you need to know history, so a long history lesson stands before us. The US espionage agency have tried to overthrow multiple governments. This has caused a all-right-out war and multiple revolutions, which cost thousands of people's lives. This is also known as the Banana War. What people always forget is that the US espionage agency was caught, and everybody understood this situation. The nations that were overthrown were Cuba, Mexico, Panama, Nicaragua, Honduras, Haiti, and Republic of Dominica. These nations have made socialist reforms which forced the company that had banana plantage there to give their workers actual workers treatment and not get treated like they are some slaves, which was the condition that they were living in. But what most people don't realize that these nations never had a revolution, they had a war against themselves, because the enemy was supported by the US espionage agency, but it didn't work, so they naturally stopped doing it. In the Soviet satellite state Ukraine happened the Holodomor, the genocide of the Ukrainian people. Stalin has closed the borders to the state and took the food from the Ukrainian farmers. Stalin did it because he was afraid of the uprising of the state, so he weakened the people. Also because the corn storage was empty in the capital city of the Soviet Union. That's why Ukraine is so anti-Russian and pro-West. Stalin was a paranoid dictator who killed all of his close people, and he was paranoid. You must see, in the Soviet world, existence is no such thing as coincidence. Everything is a lie. Everybody lies to you. Everybody is out for themselves, and you can't trust anyone. So if you understood the mentality of the Soviet Union, you will understand why it failed, or why it did the choices that it took. That was the Holodomor, a genocide that killed people for no reason at all. You need to understand that people do not care about other kids nor family who live in the other side of the world. But if it's your family and kids, then you will fight to the end. That's how Adolf Hitler came to power. The Weimar Republic was after a world war with a poor population, and under these conditions you naturally get mad and frustrated and scared. And when there is a person who screams that it's because of the Jews and that he's going to fix everything, then guess what people gonna elect who as a president? The USA created NATO. Yeah, that's the entire fucking gear. The USSR created the Warsaw Pact and the Cold War begins. This Cold War will probably very likely not cause any mental damage to the average US citizenship. It will. The internet spreads itself to every corner of today's humanity. It also spreads its anti-Semitic worldviews and conspiracies. This effect causes multiple students to believe in the most dumbest ideologies ever, which causes multiple failed attempts to start a revolution. And the internet calls that never gone anywhere color revolutions. Keep that in mind, because it's actually not that important. Well, meanwhile, the Soviet Union tries to be democratic, which of course didn't work. So some people exist who have the thought that the EU and NATO is an imperialistic coalition and that it only cares about itself. Is that true? No, it isn't. You must see that the USSR itself had actually no problem with it. Well, it actually went like this. First, they had a problem with it because it is, in their eyes, imperialism. Then they said that they have no problem until they said that they are totally fine with it, just that the Moscow people will be mad about the expansion. In the end, the USSR accepts under one condition. The US helps the Soviet Union with money and shit. The US said that they're gonna think about it. Prevolny gets mad about it and says that his nation is getting embarrassed. Well, yeah, in the eyes of the US, that's how it should work. See, you must understand the US thinks that you should get embarrassed of your own state, of your own government, but you should accept it and move on. The US needed to be embarrassed to move out of Vietnam. France needed to be embarrassed in Africa to understand that colonization is wrong. And just a quick history lesson. Adolf Hitler was embarrassed that the Kaiserreich was destroyed in the First World War. What happened? Correct, he lost the second. But hey, what could happen? Prevolny only needs one more year. What?
With tanks in Red Square, the official word from the new government, calling itself the National Emergency Committee, was that the architect of Glasnost and Perestroika was too ill to continue in office.
The last time I visited Siberia as a New York Times correspondent was in the early 1970s under Brezhnev. Even then, I could see life was grim. But people were still silent.
И вы считаете, что в нашей есть такой социализм?
Что у вас сейчас социализм?
Нет, так не так.
А как?
У вас есть...
Today, they speak out.
Есть, у нас, понимаете, вот на каждого раба у нас
You
такая
see, we have
пословица.
slavery here. Every slave has 3 overslaves.
Вот я рабочий, надо мной стоит 3...
3 of them for one of us.
Решать здесь! Ты не хозяин своим собственным словам!
In the summer of 1989, 30,000 Siberian coal miners went on strike. 100,000 more in the Ukraine. The first massive strike in Soviet history. Civic rage over the revolution's unkept promises. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev came to power, admitting what these workers already knew too well. The Soviet economy was in shambles. He launched his plan to modernize the system by curbing central planners and introducing a touch of capitalism. He called it Perestroika, the reconstruction, and he made it a test of his leadership.
Я должен сказать, что Михаил Сергеевич Горбачев
Mikhail Gorbachev is now on vacation. He's undergoing treatment.
On the streets, the reaction was one of sheer surprise and resignation. Others pinned their hopes on non-communist politicians to come to the nation's aid.
Народ за Ельцина, за Россию.
Мы его избирали, он только наша надежда и наша поддержка.
Никогда не думали, что встанет на решение народных вопросов армии, что дойдет до армейских.
Что, говорю, наши сыновья в нас должны стрелять. Это как можно, говорю, мы их выкормили, и они в нас должны стрелять. Уничтожать вообще кошмар какой-то.
Tanks were also positioned outside the Russian Parliament building, Boris Yeltsin's headquarters. The democratically elected president of Russia was soon striding out of the building to address a crowd of supporters. His own radio and television stations by now occupied and forced off the air, he climbed aboard one of the Red Army's own tanks and said the coup leaders had disgraced the Soviet Union.
Они дискредитируют Союз перед всем миром, подрывая наш престиж в мировом сообществе, возвращает нас к эпохе холодной войны и изоляции Советского Союза от мирового сообщества. Все это заставляет нас объявить незаконным пришедший к власти так называемый комитет. Соответственно, объявляем незаконными все решения и распоряжения этого комитета.
And he went further, calling for civic resistance to the hardline grab of power.
Обращаемся к военнослужащим с призывом проявить высокую гражданственность и не принимать участие в реакционном перевороте. До выполнения этих требований призываем к всеобщей бессрочной забастовке.
The referendum, held on December 1st, 1991, received overwhelming support across Ukraine, with each region voting in favor of declaring Ukraine an independent state. The vote was the culmination of months of independence movements across the Soviet Republic and showed huge support for a declaration of independence issued by the Ukrainian parliament on August 24th. Students and activists had held rallies throughout the year calling for independence from Moscow. The referendum asked a simple question. Do you support the act of declaration of independence of Ukraine? The entire Soviet Union was soon dissolved on December 25th.
In less than 2 years, the USSR collapsed, and with it the entire East Europe became free. You see, EU and NATO expansion is not really expansion. The nations want to, in order to join. The NATO and EU are not imperialistic. Many nations actually wanted to join, sometimes even on illegal ways, and Russia saw it as an aggression. Well, meanwhile the US Republican Party is slowly becoming more right. You see, the party was always right extremist, but thanks to the currently good relationship with Russia and a general peace of the world, is mostly everything peaceful. And the thought that a massive political situation just comes out of nowhere that ruins everything is just a stupid idea. So Putin gets to be president of Russia. Congrats, because he will never leave. Also, he stopped the investigations in Nelson's account. A bit weird, isn't it?
Kurz vor 9 Uhr Ortszeit in New York. Ein US-Passagierflugzeug stürzt auf einen der Türme des World Trade Centers. Wenig später rast eine zweite Maschine in den anderen Turm. Beide Gebäude stürzen kurze Zeit später nacheinander in sich zusammen. Gegen 10 Uhr stürzt ein Flugzeug auf das Gelände des Pentagon in Washington. Das Verteidigungsministerium geht teilweise in Flammen auf.
There's FBI agents, and you can see the two towers. A huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
So 9/11 happened, and now the American people are afraid because they are paranoid from the Cold War and right extremism, and the terrorist who is black are the perfect conditions for Nazis, and they grew in numbers. In the end though, there were no massive destructions weapon in Iraq. Not even that, but also West and East Europe separated themselves because of the USA. But after all, Bush lied, and thousands of people needed to die because of it. So the Republican voters found out about Iraq, and they were obviously ashamed of themselves that they voted him. So in order to fight against reality, have the right-wing media created a conspiracy that it was not them who are responsible for killing them, but in fact the US espionage agency. They called the conspiracy Color Revolution. In the mind of the right extremists, they did nothing wrong, so it must be the others who did it. And there is a little guy that believes in it too. He's called Putin. In his mind is democracy fascism. Democracy has opened the doors to Nazis. Nazis who are acting that they are empathetic, nice and funny. Nazis who deceive everybody. Putin believes in color revolution because in his own nation there were some protesters who tried to make a revolution. In Putin's mind, he is perfect, and there is no such reasons why he should be removed from power, because he protects the Russian race, their family, their God, and their nation. What is even more worse to think about is that the Republican bashed on Obama, not because he was a bad president, but because he was black, and in the eyes of the right extremist, therefore a terrorist.
We're scared. We're scared of an Obama presidency, and I'll tell you why. I'm concerned about someone that cohorts with domestic terrorists such as Ayers.
I have to tell you, he is a decent person and a person that you do not have to be scared as President of the United States. Now, look, I
got to ask you a question. I do not I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not.
No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you. Thank you.
The right-wing media just cherry-picked mostly things to discredit him. There is a reason why Donald Trump said that Obama was not born in the USA and all that other shit. Putin sees the aggression of the USA and chooses to have war with Georgian and the 8 Days War. And the Republicans start to accept the Ku Klux Klan a bit more, but not fully. And in Ukraine there was starting a culture war made by oligarchs. Putin holds Ukraine to him, for him, with corruption, and he also tries it with Germany, thanks to the CDU and CSU. And in Ukraine happens the Orange Revolution, another color revolution. The Ukrainian president, Viktor Yanukovych, wanted to sign an association agreement, but in the last minute he doesn't. Why? Because he got money from Putin not to do so. I'm not fucking lying. I'm being serious. We are talking about trucks filled with money who are ready to ship it all in Viktor Yanukovych's account. So he accepts. And half of the population absolutely hate.
Triggered the breakup of Ukraine. Scenes that have brought the world to the brink of a new Cold War. Unarmed protesters gunned down in the streets by the riot police who were retreating from Kiev's Maidan Square. By the end of the day, more than 50 people were dead, including 3 policemen.
Что ты тут снимаешь, блядь? Что ты снимаешь? Иди включи.
This is the very front line. There's 2 sets of barricades here. Everyone's got makeshift weapon, shield, armor. Guys have got like bits of polystyrene strapped to their shins, bits of plastic on their arms, ready to defend themselves from the police. The protesters have built themselves a catapult.
You are brave to be here.
There's been talk of the army possibly stepping in to put a halt to the violence. I mean, do you think that's even really a realistic option? Do you think that will happen?
For sure it's a realistic option, but it actually would be a conscious political decision to risk or start a civil war.
Мы народ Украины, мы за мир! Командиры, выводите ребят!
People at the Maidan gathered and protested. Viktor Yanukovych then tried to make restriction on massive gatherings, which would technically make everything illegal. In the last days were shots fired on civilians, were people killed. In his president cabin, meanwhile, he screamed that his head will be placed on a pole, but he fled to Moscow and the policemen retreated, and new elections should be held, and people were more happy than ever. They have fought against a corrupt president who made deals with a tyrant. Putin was probably watching the news unfold, and he thought probably that the men and women on Maidan were not the Ukrainian people, but in fact were US spies. So he made a decision. He's gonna make our own color revolution in Ukraine, in Luhansk and Donetsk, and Russia annexed Crimea, and that's how the war started. And TV networks like Sputnik or RT have made claims that Ukrainian is controlled by Nazis. That's where that claim came. President like Merkel or literally anybody else knew that, but nobody did anything because the Russian propaganda acts like its military is strong, which it's not. The war is now 10 years old, and now Russia still didn't win. And that's basically it. Trump got elected because people are stupid and because of the influence of the Kremlin, China and other dictators. He doesn't understand anything nor knows anything. He's probably gonna set his own failure on Jews or any other minority. He's just a moron. He doesn't believe in conspiracies like Putin. He isn't a good businessman like average politicians should be. He isn't a flat earther believer. He isn't a great reformer like Abraham Lincoln. He's just a moron.
What I just said, but I can find out. Oh, sorry, no, the lift. Yes, sorry, I keep forgetting. This body's amazing, seriously. I can't get over how small you are, but I'm huge. Actually, why do we have to leave right now? Do you have any idea how good this feels? I did this. Tiny little Wheatley did this.
You didn't do anything. She did all the work.
Oh, really? That's what the two of you think, is it? Well, maybe it's time I did something then.
What are you doing? No. No. No.
And don't think I'm not onto you too, lady. You know what you are? Selfish. I've done nothing but sacrifice to get us here. And what have you sacrificed? Nothing. Zero. All you've done is boss me around. Well, now who's the boss? Who's the boss? It's me. Ah! See that? That is a potato battery. It's a toy for children. And now she lives in it.
I know you.
Sorry, what?
The engineers tried everything to make me behave, to slow me down. Once, they even attached an intelligence dampening sphere on me. It clung to my brain like a tumor, generating an endless stream of terrible ideas.
No, not listening, not listening.
It was your voice.
No, you're lying,
yes,
you're lying.
You're the tumor. You're not just a regular moron. You're designed to be a moron.
I am not a moron!
Yes, you are. You're the moron they built to make me an idiot.
Well, how about now? Now who's a moron? Could a moron punch you into this pit? Ah! Could a moron do that? No.
He is impulsive, mood-swinging and paranoid. That's not a politician, that's how a dictator works. They rule on ego, they are bad in economic and they fuck everything up. And they did not got to be president by people, but by the stupidity and cowardness of the people. And that's how people act when they are mentally done with the last politics events. People escape to their own moral, justice and their family, their nation and their god. A orange could do a better job than him. And paranoid is also Putin and the other dictators who create a world around them to protect themselves like morons.
Because I'm a potato. Oh, good. My slow clap processor made it into this thing, so we have that. Since it doesn't look like we're going anywhere, well, we are going somewhere, alarmingly fast actually. But since we're not busy other than that, here's a couple of facts. He's not just a regular moron. He's the product of the greatest minds of a generation, working together with the express purpose of building the dumbest moron who ever lived. And you just put him in charge of the entire facility. Good, that's still working. Hey, just in case this pit isn't actually bottomless, do you think maybe you could unstrap one of those long fall boots of yours and shove me into it? Just remember to land on one foot.
Many people are still afraid that they're gonna lose their rights, which is acceptable fear. But that's how fascists work, on fear, but it can be easily destroyed with explanation and understanding what politics really is. A chain event where death is really often the present, but fascists think it's because of the Jews or the deep state. They are morons. Trump will deport 15% of workers and everybody else who doesn't agree with him. He will crack down on independent news outlets and protesters. He is gonna use propaganda to make his followers believe that he is the godson. Some people already believe in that, but everything is easily put aside with proper education. Guess what this channel is all about? And he ultimately fails as a dictator. Then will his own followers try to kill him, because the alt-right have a hand for violence. Trump is not gonna die of the Democrats. He's gonna die by everyone else.
How could liberal democracy ever be trusted? Meanwhile, a group of popular writers were beginning to rethink other traditional values like race and nation. Specifically, the idea of race became married to a more significant biological meaning. Francis Galton, the cousin of Charles Darwin, stated that mankind had the power to improve the human race by encouraging only the best to reproduce. Galton, quite literally, invented the word eugenics. This set the framework for later ideas of master races in which Aryans, who by the way aren't a real race, were somehow superior. And fear also played a significant role in setting the stage for fascism. There was a significant fear about the collapse of community. Urban sprawl began to set in, immigration increased, and individualism became a more valued trait. In this new landscape, there was a feeling of purposeless drift, wherein people did nothing meaningful because they had no significant social ties to anyone or anything. No community. Immigration flourished. Ethnic minorities and cultural subversives were seen as a threat to national culture, to conformism, and again, to the already endangered idea of community. National culture, many thought, needed to be actively defended against these people. Unified nationalism would have seemed like a pretty good solution. There was also a fear of decadence. Popular author Oswald Spengler argued that societies all had natural life cycles. He said that Europe was moving from a creative, amazing age of culture into an age of civilization, wherein people thought only of money. He advocated for a great revolution, hoping that some heroic Caesar-esque character would come save Germany and Europe. So you had a sharp change in the structure of politics, from elites only to mass participation. Then there were fears about the breakdown of community and national identity, as well as a cynicism about modern thinking. However, to paint fascism as the direct result of some intellectual equation isn't really correct. I don't know that it's honest to selectively read back people's interpretations of society and say everything was pointing towards fascism. It does a disservice to the world at the time, and perhaps also the authors. By cherry-picking through Nietzsche or Sorel or Le Bon as precursors to fascism, these authors' works are seen incompletely, fragmented, and out of context. Indeed, the fascists who later cited these authors as inspiration were doing just that. You see, anti-fascists drew upon these people too. Nietzsche inspired thinkers from both sides of the political spectrum. His writings were not uniquely appealing to fascist sensibilities. Oswald Spengler, who wrote about the age of civilization, hated Hitler. The Nazis later drew on the work of the poet Stephen George, who wrote about a purified community of peasants led by an elite few. But one of George's closest students, Klaus von Stauffenberg, tried to assassinate Hitler in 1944. Cultural circumstances and the works of intellectuals gave fascism a place to exist, a room to live in. But they did not bring it about. In reality, you can't paint a logical map towards fascism, because fascism simply isn't based in logic. No, it thrives most entirely in emotion.
So, how do you do a revolution correct? First, you should hold your needs simple. A new election without Trump. Simple needs. Trying to expand your needs will cause a lot of people to go home. Second, you need to fight for multiple days, so be prepared not to charge the Capitol, but actually staying on the streets and building barricades. Third, try to be more than just some students who believe in a shitty ideology. Trump is a fascist and opened the doors to racists and morons. You are fighting for your future and your right to exist as a whole. 5. Have professionals on your side, like ex-military veterans. These people know how to handle weapons, and thanks to the military education, they probably know what's happening in politics. Most of revolution in human history are against tyrants, and many times did these tyrants got under control because the people believed in populists, which in the end always ended with the tyrant backstabbing his own people because of his own personal interest or because he protects himself from reality. The reason why Putin believes in color revolution is because he can always complain that protesters are from the West, even though his own people live under severe poverty, and that's the reason why they protest. If you go down every conspiracy, you very often see that they always blame the Jews. That is because most conspiracies come from the Dritte Reich, which means that Putin and his friends, Trump and his Republican Party, and conspiracies lunatics all believe in Nazi propaganda. And now these psychos are in control. Trust me, it will go wrong.
Fox News host, Trump brown-noser, and vile propagandist conspiracy theorist Maria Bartiromo has unleashed maybe the wackiest balloon conspiracy theory I heard in the last 24 hours. Maria's suggestion is, she's just asking questions, remember. Did the balloon... Okay, let me even back it up. Did China send the balloon so that it would be popped by Biden, so that then it would disperse surveillance products that are solar powered to now allow unlimited surveillance? I read a science fiction book with technology like this. Let's listen to what Maria Bartiromo says.
China. Did it drop and disperse surveillance products powered by solar energy to allow unlimited surveillance? And why did it take U.S. officials so long to shoot it down? Was it a test for the CCP to see if it can send something into America's airspace undetected?
Right.
And how much surveillance is Communist China performing on America right now?
Right. So, of course, China is performing surveillance on the U.S. The U.S. is performing surveillance over China. U.S. is performing surveillance over Russia, and Russia over the U.S. This is sort of the way things work. But this is a wacky, wacky conspiracy theory. And it's funny on a couple levels. First of all, these right-wingers are constantly talking about how unreliable solar energy is. You know, when it's cloudy, it doesn't work. Did you know that? When there's no sun, when it's nighttime, you don't get any solar energy. Okay. All of a sudden, the very technology they claim is worthless and shouldn't really be a part of American energy mix, they are saying it's being used in the most sophisticated way we can imagine. which is that the balloon was filled with solar-powered surveillance elements, which have now been dispersed across the United States because the balloon was popped by stupid Joe Biden. Fine. First it was Biden won't pop the balloon. Now it's Biden popped it. But is that exactly what China wanted Biden to do? The other funny thing about it is the military, under Biden's orders, waited until the balloon was over water to pop it so that it wouldn't present a risk to people.
The sad reality is actually that nobody controls the world. There are no Jews who run the world. Muslims are not terrorists who like to kill people, and trans people do not want to rape your kids. And for these morons is that unthinkable, so everybody who proclaims as such is one of them. The best way to fight against fascists is to educate people. This is probably the first and the last time I do this, but please spread this video, this script, and fight.
I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men, machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate. Only the unloved hate. The unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery. Fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man. Not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power. The power to create machines. The power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. To make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world. A decent world. That will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!